Hey everybody, it's Laurel here. Welcome back again. I just thought I'd take a little break in the day and talk to you about what the whole journey was to get to this point in my life, living in this house that I absolutely love, my husband and I, but I'm just talking about me right now. We love it, but I love it. And I really feel like I came full circle in my living in spaces journey. Now, if you've ever identified with the concept of I don't like where I live, or I used to live in a place that just was not conducive to me, I hated it. And we can use that strong word because I did at one point in my life, actually 2 different times. And I wanted to share with you just the journey from where I started out to where I am now. And Griffey just flopped himself down. So if you heard this big groan, that was my dog Griff just relaxing. So I grew up on the South Shore of Massachusetts in a town that was about 30 miles from Boston, South Shore. And I just grew up there. That's where I was raised. And the good thing was that on my mom's side of the family, there was a farm. We called it the farm, but it was in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont and in a little town called Richford. And this was right on the Canadian border. And as a child, for many, many years, we would go up there every summer. Sometimes I would stay there with my grandparents, just me, for several weeks during the summer, and then my parents would come up and collect me, and we'd go back down to Massachusetts. And one of the things about the farm, and it was an old farmhouse, just like this is an old farmhouse. It had a beautiful river, the Missisquoi River, that ran across the street. There were fields, and it was just a wonderful place for a kid to experience nature and to be creative and to just go off. In those days, you could just go off and you could just be by yourself. And nobody was thinking anything strange or worried that you were going to disappear. It was a whole different time back then. And I just have so many wonderful memories. Now, cut back to growing up, going through school, high school, graduating high school, going to art school. It just never even occurred to me that I was dissatisfied with where I lived, the town that I grew up in, and just didn't ever think about, well, if you don't like it here, why don't you've graduated art school, why don't you think about going back up to Vermont or another state in New England or somewhere in the United States? But I wasn't that daring, and I think I just lived in a bit of a box. And a year and a half after I graduated college, I married my first husband and I had a child, a son, and we moved 2 towns over and in a little apartment, and we stayed there for a little bit, and then we jumped to another place. And I'll just say this right in the very beginning before I forget. In the time that I grew up in my home, my childhood home, I have moved 12 times since that time of my own volition, not my family moving, just me or with my husband. So what ended up happening was we rented for a little while, different towns. We would rent for a year, and then we'd go and rent somewhere else in another town that was close by, and all of our family was right around in the area. And that was good because the family helped each other out in whatever way they could with anything. So we had a close family, but there was always just this feeling of not really being a part of, you just did what you did. And so we saved up enough money by living with my parents, and we bought our first house, like I said, in 1995, if I didn't say that already. And it was a center chimney cape. It was built in 1834, and it needed a ton of work, as usual, and it had been abandoned for a year. There was nobody living in the house for about a year prior to us buying it. And back in 1995, I don't mind saying, we paid $85,000 for this center chimney cape that sat on a little over a quarter of an acre. That's unimaginable today, and at least in New England. And so we stayed there. My son's father and I did split, and I stayed there, so I should say that, for 20 years until 1995. And then I got married again, and he moved in, and we did a huge addition on this house. I should preface, we did what we could. My father helped me out a lot. He was in construction, he was an interior finisher, and so we took that little center chimney cape and we did the best we could. We just fixed it as best as we could with the money that we had. We never had a lot of money, finances were tight, and so we just did what we did and spent 20 years there. And so when my second husband moved in, we decided to do a very large remodel, and it really changed the structure of the house. And I remember sitting in the kitchen when the construction was almost done, and it was extensive. It was a 5-month job. It turned into a different shape. It looked like a cape in the front, but it was actually like a salt box on the side. So it had changed the shape and structure of the house, and it needed it, I would say. But I remember sitting in the kitchen, the newly remodeled kitchen. We got a brand new kitchen too. And I was sitting on the floor, and there was no furniture in there. And I knew that I was not going to be staying in this house. I just had a feeling that this was going to be very short-lived, and so it was. And so after that, our marriage started to fall apart, and he bought me out of the house. He still lives in that house to this day, and we're friends. We're friendly, but I had to move on. And with my massage therapist salary, because this is what I still continue to do for a living these days, even 27 years in the business, but at that time I could afford maybe a condo, but I was talked into moving into a mobile home park that my parents actually had sold the family home and downsized and moved into this park. And I felt very much under duress, and I went and I lived there. And I remember walking through the streets. I was probably the youngest person in the park. I was kind of ushered in, even though I was a little bit underage for the park. And I remember walking the streets at night and just crying and thinking, where is my life and what have I done? Why am I here? And all the circumstances that happened, I brought myself there, through our choices, and that's a whole other video. But I stayed there for almost 3 years, and I met my current husband, Billy, and we've been together for about 9 years now. And we decided, he got a job offer in New Hampshire, and he asked if I wanted to leave, and I said, yes, yes. I felt like a fish out of water, yes. And so sold my place. We rented in Manchester, New Hampshire for a while. That was rough. We stayed there for about 4 months. It was in a very bad area, and we didn't know. It was a little townhouse. It was cute on the inside, but it was in a very bad area, and I needed to get out. So through a realtor, we found a place in Goffstown, New Hampshire, which was a cabin, log cabin, a real one, that sat on 3 acres of land. And it had just woods and this beautiful hill that you could look out at. And I just loved it. It was one of the places that I thought, oh, I wish we could buy this. And we actually asked the landlord, and he was kind of like, over it. And then my husband got another job offer, a nice one. But it was out in the Midwest, and it was in Missouri. And I remember saying to him, I am not moving to Missouri. I'm not moving. And guess what? We moved. And I said, under the condition that we do not rent, we need to buy. What was my thinking? I don't know. But in hindsight, we did buy. And we bought an oversized mid-century ranch that was way bigger than we needed. It was well over 2,000 square feet. It, again, was very dated, needed a lot of work, needed a lot of love. In tongue-in-cheek, I called it the Darling House. I named my houses, if you haven't guessed already. And the Darling House needed a lot of work because, well, just through our choices, we weren't afraid of doing the work. And I kind of like a good project, actually. But I felt like a complete, how do you say, just a change. I can't think of the word right now. We're talking about feeling like a fish out of water. I just felt so geographically disconnected, and this has nothing to do with the state of Missouri in general or anywhere in the Midwest. I think when you are used to living by the ocean and mountains, and this is where you grew up and everything, and then you move out to a different, topography wise, it's so different. Cultural wise, there was a lot of differences, and I just didn't fit in. I met some wonderful people. I authored a book, a children's book, and illustrated it, and it's available on Amazon. It's called The Great Chili Con Carne Cook-Off, and I meant to grab it to show you, but it is on Amazon. It's in hard and soft cover, and that was one thing that I did while living in Missouri that I felt was just a personal check the box endeavor that I completed, and I'm very proud of that book. But I didn't make any friends. I was friendly to people. Like I said, I met great people, some great artists. I sold some work. I was in galleries there. I worked at a co-op gallery in Kansas because we were like 30 minutes from the border of Kansas. And we lived in a suburb of Kansas City, and there was every big box store you could imagine and everything you could ever want. But as somebody who just craves nature and craves the natural world, a lot of the things where we lived were man-made. Like all the parks were man-made, and there really wasn't any place to go into nature and escape into the woods because it was just it's like a lot of the Midwest is very flat, and it's farmland, and that farmland is all gated off and things for their animals and so on and so forth. And I was miserable. I was just so unhappy, and I would cry a lot, and that's what I mean. It's like you could have been from the Midwest moving to the East Coast and feel the same way. Just it doesn't fit your personality or in your soul. Something is just not right. So we got an opportunity to move back, and we ended up, we had no idea. We knew we wanted to go to New Hampshire. Again, most of our family is on the East Coast, so that worked out. But we ended up renting, and we rented in a little town called Hinsdale, which is in the Connecticut River Valley, and that's actually where we are now, not in Hinsdale, but a different town. And we got in touch with a realtor that we had been working with, and we saw this listing just kind of like, I don't know, I didn't know anything about the town. But on the way to see this house, just on a whim, it turned out that somebody was going to buy it, but it fell through, and then it went on the market just briefly, and we just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And we ended up looking at the house, or we stopped actually up the street in a little village area, and I was looking around and I said, I don't want to fall in love with this town, just in case like we didn't get it. But right away I knew something was just perfect about this area, this place. There was just something that pulled me here, and lo and behold, we ended up buying this house. And I've already said in other videos, this is not the perfect house as far as structure and all the bells and whistles and up to date and all of that stuff. It's not, but it is a work in progress. And I truly feel like how I felt about my grandparents' farm, that feeling of just being at one with nature. And this is exactly right. This is the right place to be. That's what I felt the moment we stepped in the house, the moment we stepped in the town. It was just like coming full circle, like I said. And to this day, even if it's like you find a big hole in the roof and, you know, are frustrated or whatever, we haven't found a hole in the roof, but something that needs to be fixed, even something major, and we've had some major things that we needed to do, it doesn't deter us from the fact like, oh, this house. And I called it the Sulky House because if you've ever been in a space and you got a vibe, you got an energy from the space, and I do believe that houses and spaces, even objects, hold energy, and it can be positive, negative, or anything in between. And this house felt very sad to me. It's how I felt about the Missouri house, the Darling house as well. It felt very sad, and I don't feel that way now. And the biggest compliment I got was we got to know our neighbors. They came over to give a Christmas gift, and we exchanged little something back and forth. And they saw the inside of the house for the first time, and the husband said, he turned to me and he said, "This house loves you." And I thought, well, we love it too. And it was such a great compliment because you could tell stepping in that it was a happy home, that it was a comfortable home, like somebody else other than us could feel that. And I know that this house is happy with all its quirks and all the things, like I said a million times, that needs to be done. Nothing major, just cosmetic stuff and structural stuff that we need to work on. And at 60, and my husband's 62, to take on a house that has like lots of things that need to be done, maybe that's kind of crazy. You know, maybe we should have, I'm not a real condo person. Again, not knocking anybody who's in a condo. I've seen some beautiful condos, and I know that that can be, you know, have its own advantages for sure. We were just out, again, snow blowing the yard this morning, and all the shoveling and all the physical work that needs to be done. Fortunately, you know, we're able to do it at this point in my life. And again, what happens tomorrow? What happens from 10 years from now? I don't know. All I can say is this, the message. If you don't like where you are, I beg you, and I understand sometimes you just are there, and when the timing is right, it'll happen. But I hope that you do, if first of all, love where you live. I hope that you do. Like I feel waking up every morning, like I just really like where I am right now. Mind, body, soul, all of that. And physically in a space. I hope that that happens for you if it hasn't already happened, and that you have, if it hasn't, that you have the courage to just get yourself moving in a direction where you do at last feel like you're in a place that you do love and that you don't feel badly in. because I think that really does something to the spirit when you don't have a space that you can feel, like yourself. So that's my story. I just wanted to share that, and I just love that people are watching, and I hope you continue to watch our adventures. I never say this, but if you're interested in the content, please like, please subscribe if you want, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. So for now, please take the best of care as always, and have a wonderful day.